Welcome to Man vs. Mind. My name is Jay.
And I'm Tim. It's the wrong way round this week, isn't it?
Yeah, it is the wrong way round.
Yeah, listeners are going, what is going on here?
As you may have noticed, we have flipped the script this week. And I think only for this week, because that was a lot of pressure coming in for that intro.
Yeah, you've got a bit of respect for how it's done now, haven't you, mate?
Yeah, I've always had respect. but just like a little peek behind the curtain, which I'm known for, Tim always goes, I'm a bit nervous now. I'm like, why? We do it every week and you're so good at it. But yeah, the nerves were flowing then for me.
Yeah.
And it's literally just saying...
Well, you jumped straight in there.
Hi, this is Man vs. Mind.
Yeah, straight enough. Perfectly done.
Wonderful.
I think, yeah, all the boxes were ticked.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Oh, hang on, one hasn't been ticked.
Go on.
Please follow Instagram and other things that we do.
Just follow Instagram. There's some great stuff on there.
Man vs. Mind. All major platforms, all stores near you.
Yeah. Yep, there you go.
Box ticked.
I think you nailed it.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So the reason that we are flipping the script, changing, well, we haven't changed seats, but changing
Still
starting order.
uncomfortably close.
Still uncomfortably close.
Yeah.
Is because for the last few episodes, months since we've been doing this, you have referenced a certain point in your time that was tricky for you, and a lot went down.
Yep.
So 2 weeks ago now, I think it was, we said that we were going to do this, and
Yes, we did.
how are you feeling about it?
Nervous AF.
Yeah?
To be honest, yeah. Yeah, we'll get into it in a minute.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've described this before as being like the genesis of my kind of like awareness around having a mental health issue. And yeah, we'll talk all about it because it was intense and it led me to some really dark places.
Okay.
So we'll jump into that as we go through the episode. We'll go through it all. And I think the reason why I've been thinking about it more and more is because you very bravely did your breakdown of a panic attack, and then when we were talking in last week's episode with Mark about vulnerability, he said, if you haven't listened to the episode, by the way, go back. It's brilliant. It's our episode with the Mental Health Foundation.
Yeah.
And he said we as humans are so averse. There's nothing worse than kind of the fear of humiliation and shame. And I think I put on Instagram that humiliation and shame would be a great strapline for this podcast. But it just made me think, actually, I should be vulnerable in the most authentic sense. And you know, if that hadn't have happened to me, then so many other things in my life wouldn't have happened to me, and we wouldn't have done this podcast.
No.
And so many other people go through life, you know, aware of stuff that bothers them, but not ever having an
outlet.
Yeah, and the term that's used in like dramatic writing is an inciting incident. So something that really accelerates the storyline. And that kind of accelerated my mental health journey exponentially to the point where I was really, really thrown by how quickly it all happened.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to, I felt like in the name of authenticity for what we're doing with this show, actually talking about the origin of my kind of realization around anxiety. And it was much worse than anxiety at the time. To be completely honest with our listeners and to be as authentic as possible, I thought it was time to talk about it.
Yeah, good.
And this is going to be really uncomfortable for me.
Yeah, well, okay. I mean, you're going to feel how I felt a couple of weeks ago when I was sat here just a sweaty mess.
Yeah. And in our prep for this episode, I sent you a really, really long voice note, which you described as sounding as though I'd sent it through a tin and a tin can and a string.
Yeah, it was bad.
It was terrible quality. I'm really sorry about that. And so
it was also like 20 minutes long, so I had to listen to all of it.
Yeah, it was far too long. I was driving. I was driving and I didn't realise that I'd been speaking for as long as I had.
Which leads me to another point.
Yeah.
In that 20 minutes,
yeah,
there were about 7 or 8 proper aggressive breakouts with someone driving past you or trying to cut you off. So next week we have to do road rage because I was listening going, what is going on?
Yeah, that's reasonable. That's reasonable. Well, you know, peak morning rush hour traffic.
Yeah, I get it.
You know,
I get it.
It's quite hard to keep it together.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay, we'll do road rage. We'll break the tension a little bit from the last few weeks, which have been a bit more full on.
Yeah.
We'll bring in a little bit more kind of irreverence next week by talking about things that make us swear on the road. Yeah. Okay.
So you want to go into it, or do you want to touch on last week's episode quickly? Because I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone who has firstly joined us from that episode. And this may be the second episode that you're listening to now, if you haven't gone back and listened to the rest.
Yeah, if you're new around here, thanks for joining us. You're welcome here.
Yeah. And also everyone that reached out and sent us a message, engaged in the conversation. We were really blown away from it. We had some really kind of in-depth messages about how people are feeling, and it was great.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
So thanks to Mark again. If you haven't listened to that episode, go back to last week's episode on the feed.
Yeah. All right. You ready?
Yeah, all right. Where do we begin?
Where do we begin?
Come on, you're the interviewer today.
I know. I feel nervous like you.
You look more uncomfortable than me.
So take us back to the time, Tim. Take us back to not how you were feeling prior to the kind of event that has been discussed before or spoken about before.
Yeah, okay. So it was back in 2015.
Mm-hmm.
I had just got married, and I don't think the two are connected. And shall I just jump straight into it?
Yeah, go.
Yeah. I had arrived at work one morning in summer 2015, and it was still fairly early in the morning. And because I could talk about it for 20 minutes, as you experienced, without actually saying what happened. So I'll just jump straight in with what actually fucking happened to me.
Yeah.
I was sitting at my desk at work, and all of a sudden, it felt as though every single negative thought I'd ever had started screaming at me at the same time. Like really, really loud, really clear, but as in each individual thought was really clear, but it was so intense and everything happened at the same time that it felt like my head was about to explode. And, you know, a lot of the stuff that we've spoken about on this show before, body image was a main one. In hindsight, after doing therapy much later than I should have done, I realised that was like a big underpinning factor for a lot of the negativity that I had going around in my head. And basically everything that could have been thrown up at once did. I felt insecure about whether I was going to be a good enough husband for my wife. Would she always want to be with me? Would she get bored of me, or would she leave me, or whatever? Was I going to be a good enough husband to her? And so many other, just like I'd recently changed careers. So I was also then like massive imposter syndrome and insecurity just like came smacking at me all at once. And so many other things that I've actually kind of repressed because, excuse me, because it was so intense. I actually can't remember every thought that I had at the time, but those were some of the big ones that were like spinning around in my head. And so because it was so intense, I felt dizzy, like really, really dizzy, really, really faint. I felt like all the blood had drained from my face, and I felt like I was burning up at the same time. And my boss said to me, he said, "You're not looking so good. Are you okay?" And I mean, that sounded like someone was speaking to me underwater. Like I was so not present in that moment that I barely even heard it. It barely even registered on my radar.
Like almost when you see a movie and like a bomb goes off in the corner and it's just like ringing in the ear.
Yeah. Not too dissimilar, you know. And I said, no, I've got to go home. I've got to go home. Which then became the longest fucking commute home ever.
So you were in London at this point?
I was in London, yeah. I lived in I lived outside of London, but I worked in central London and had like a 45-minute to an hour's commute home. And my head was fucking spinning. I was so overwhelmed from a psychological perspective, but also in terms of my senses. I was just being bombarded, and I felt like I was in a genuine state of panic, real panic. And I just had to get home.
At this point, had you ever felt anything like this prior?
Not really.
So this is all a new sensation that's coming, and it's come all at once. Oh,
I think the only thing I can really think of that came close would have been a few years before that. I went skiing, and I assume it was altitude, but I just kind of really freaked out when I was right at the top of a mountain.
Okay, yeah.
But not for very long. And it wasn't about anything in particular. It was more kind of physical than it wasn't psychological.
Quite natural. You're at the top of a mountain.
Well,
it can be quite scary.
Yeah, I'll give you that one. And so that journey home was really horrific. I just remember putting in headphones, listening to anything, and just trying to like bury my head in my phone just to kind of try and just sort of white knuckle ride through it. And I got home, I climbed straight into bed and cried, I think, because I didn't know what the fuck was happening to me. And then I almost literally shit myself.
I shouldn't laugh, but I know exactly. I've had that when it with anxiety, your stomach goes.
Well, it turns out that I also had an intestinal virus.
Oh god. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, then I've just
And
admitted something that I shouldn't have done. Take that back.
Humiliation and
retracted.
shame. Right there. And so I had to run to the toilet. And this intestinal virus lasted for about a month. And I lost a lot of weight.
For a whole month?
Really fucking fast. Yeah, I couldn't keep anything down. Really, I couldn't keep anything down. I lost about 2 stone, about 13 kilos in about a month. And, you know, that I was kind of almost literally wasting away. And that whole while, I just continued kind of spiraling. But that we can kind of take a step back from that and talk about other stuff around it now. But I wanted to like lay out what happened.
Okay, so you had the intestinal thing, intestinal virus. Was that not enough to go? Okay, maybe it's not in my head. Maybe this is just the bug that's making me feel sick, or was it was still very much in your head?
Yeah, no, it was too obviously psychological.
Else,
Yeah, I was convinced from minute one that it was 2 things. There were 2 things going on, and it wasn't just a problem with my gut that was causing me to freak out. It was too intense. It was all consuming, and I literally didn't think about anything else for about a month.
So it was this whole process was a whole month. This whole situation.
I mean, that was the most intense part of it, and then it took a long ass time to recover from it.
Yeah. What led up to it? Is there anything that you can kind of pinpoint that would kind of, apart from the just got married, new job, which I guess are 2 really big milestones.
Yeah, big life moments, I suppose you'd say. But I want to be really careful about how I phrase this, because I don't want to underplay or diminish how serious the psychological side of it is. It took a really long time to get to the bottom of, because it's the NHS and these things take a very fucking long time. And multiple doctors' visits, seeing a different GP every time, and every single time, I think I said this to you on the voice note, every single time the GP goes, "So what appears to be the problem here today, sir?"
Same as last week, mate.
And, you're like, "Oh, I've already done this so many times." Anyway, it turns out that it was a physiological problem that caused it. But I don't want to underplay the psychological impact of it and how it became a long-term psychological problem.
So at the time, what was the impact? What were you thinking? What were you going through? Okay, you had the stomach bug. I'll call it that because I can't say the other word. The intestinal. You had the stomach bug. But what was going on in your head? What was on a daily?
It was full-on doom-mongering the whole time.
Just constantly?
Yeah. For like non-stop spiral. Like, imagine the worst spiraling you've ever had, and then make it last a month.
Oh God, that's awful.
Yeah. It was non-stop. There when I woke up, there when I went to sleep. It was there every second of every day. It was just constant, like, you're not good enough. You're never going to do anything. You should just give up. You shouldn't be with your wife. You whatever. And that started to really mangle my thoughts.
Well, yeah, it would do.
And one of the hardest parts about it was that I didn't recognize myself in the mirror anymore. I looked in the mirror, didn't recognize the person looking back at me, and then I'd fucking spiral about that.
What did you see when you looked in the mirror?
Just someone who wasn't me.
Physically or emotionally?
Both.
Mentally?
All
Both?
of it. It was a full-on brain, body, id, ego, everything felt gone. I felt like I just wasn't me anymore. Like, the person that I knew from 3 months ago wasn't that person anymore. And I remember feeling guilty, like really, really guilty about this, because obviously I was in that place. I felt really guilty about it because I was like, I don't even feel like the person that my wife just married. I feel like I'm not me anymore. I don't recognize myself. That was at the hardest point of it.
that's tough.
That it broke me.
Yeah.
It completely broke me. I didn't go back to work for 6 weeks.
So you're off for
I
6
think.
weeks.
Something like that.
And this is obviously a new job as well, which is...
Yeah, I'd been in the job for about 9 months or
Okay.
something. So I'd got my head around it and I was getting into a groove. But then I'd just been off for 3 weeks for wedding, honeymoon, all that stuff. And then it was only about a month after that, maybe a bit longer, I can't remember. But that all of this happened. And yeah, it was brutal, man. It was really, really brutal. It was a full-on identity crisis.
I think when you said you could look in the mirror and not recognize yourself, that's because that's the one constant. Whether you look in the mirror and you're not happy with what you see, and as we've discussed in the past with body image, but to look into the mirror and really not know that person, that must be really, really hard. And I can't did it have knock-on effects elsewhere? Were you how was your relationships? How was this stuff? Was like friends and all the trimmings?
Friendships, basically, I fell off the radar completely. I became incredibly dependent on my wife.
Yeah.
There were a couple of other people who helped me during that time. My mother-in-law was one of them. She would come over to our house during the day because she wasn't working when my wife was at work, and my mother-in-law would come and keep me company because I basically developed agoraphobia. I didn't want to go outside, which I think I mentioned a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, so the fear of leaving the house.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I also didn't want to be on my own. I was terrified of being on my own because I didn't want to be alone with my thoughts, because I was terrified of my own thoughts.
So you're in a kind of living oxymoron. You can't be outside with everyone, but you can't be home alone.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's nice to add oxy to it. Normally I'm just a moron.
But okay. So when you're out, why not outside? Was it because you were worried something would happen?
It was overwhelming. It was just overwhelming.
So
everything.
Okay, visually overwhelming, mental stimulation overwhelming,
sensory overload.
Yeah,
all of it. Yeah, it was too noisy. It was too bright. There were too many people. It was too much movement. Too much coloured. Whatever. Like, everything was just too much. I mean, I was quite fortunate that the Ashes was on that summer, so I just got to kind of sit in bed and just mindlessly stare at cricket all day.
It's a couple of weeks of that, and you're good.
Yeah. But then I had like some sort of PTSD flashback the next time the Ashes was on, and I was like, oh God, oh no, I can't watch cricket anymore. I can, it's fine now. I got over that. It was undeniably the hardest period of my life.
How long did it last for? This specific period of, take away the stomach bug, because that will go, as and when it goes with whatever medication you take or you're given, that will clear up. Although it may have been a major catalyst and your body not feeling particularly well and then triggering everything else. But the mental side of it and the not wanting to go outside, not wanting to be alone, self-loathing of yourself. How long was that?
Yeah. At its worst, 3 to 4 months.
So a long time.
Not as intense as the first 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah.
It started to taper off. And when we got to the root cause of it, that expedited the first part of my recovery.
Okay.
But yeah, it was longer. It gradually tapered off. And it was the following June that I was then sent to counselling.
Okay.
May, June, that sort of time.
To help it out. Well, I'll tell you what, let's take a break, get some water, then we'll come on to what transpired to be the root cause and a little bit more.
And the lessons learnt from it. And rather than this being a navel-gazing exercise, I want to give people who might be going through stuff a bit of a kick up the arse.
Yeah. Good. How you feeling? You okay?
Need a break.
Cool. Yeah. We'll take one. Welcome back to Man vs. Minds. How you doing?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah? I'm going to state the absolute blindingly obvious, but I can see that this is, tough and... How do you think it's going so far?
Well, I'm remarkably uncomfortable.
Yeah. And that's just my interviewing questions.
And it's because there's a very, 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 very limited number of people who actually know about this in any real detail. My wife, my therapist, a couple of family members.
Yeah.
That's about it.
I mean, I know very loosely from the voice note that you sent me when you talked about it, but if to be honest, even I'm struggling. I'm listening to you. I just want to give you a hug.
Oh, mate. Oh, yeah.
Because I can't
it's just
imagine.
Not very audio friendly.
I know. I can't imagine how, I get it for an hour at a time, with the anxiety and the head screaming at you and not feeling 100%. But to go through that for, you said 6 weeks, 6 months?
Both.
Yeah.
In varying intensities.
That's not fun, man. No. That's really not.
No, it wasn't. Safe to say, it wasn't much fun.
No. Yeah, sorry, I could have probably chosen some better words.
But it's important to talk about because men all over the world go through their stuff to varying degrees. It's all uniquely, and people all over the world go through their own stuff to varying degrees, and it's unique to each person, and my experience will be vastly different to someone else's, but I'm hoping that by the end of this episode, some of the mistakes I made can be ones that other people avoid.
Okay.
That's
interesting you mentioned the mistakes. We'll get into that at the kind of after we find out what it was, why it happened.
Yeah, we'll reflect.
Yeah, I think that's good. Weird that you use the word mistakes.
Yeah, I did make mistakes.
Okay.
After the fact.
After the fact.
Yeah.
All right, I'm interested.
Yeah.
You got me hooked. I'll listen to the next part of the podcast.
Yeah, you'll find out what my mistakes were at the end of the podcast.
So, you're going through this, you're visiting the doctors whenever you can, and, when you can get an appointment, and multiple different doctors to the point. But then you get one, I think you mentioned to me that you got one that you stuck with a couple of times.
Yeah.
And were able to drill down to where this might stem from and what it is. So could you let us know a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I found a doctor that I was comfortable with who actually seemed to give a shit. And I struggle to remember a lot of the details of the specifics at times, but it felt as though the appointments were almost a bit kind of cursory. She became a sort of de facto therapist, a sort of surrogate therapist, because it's the NHS. And I always went with my wife. I didn't go on my own. And I think it was about the third or fourth or something appointment.
With the same doctor?
With the same doctor, yeah. And my wife would always come with me because of the aforementioned fear of going outside on my own. And my wife suggested to the doctor, could it be a side effect from this medication that Tim's been on? And rewinding the best part of a couple of years at this point, I had started taking a steroid, not a gym junkie steroid, a steroid called prednisolone. And I was taking it for really aggressive like eczema and dermatitis that I was having, feeding into my body image issues. And I tried a range of different things that the doctors were recommending to try and get rid of it. Nothing was working. It was all over me, right? It was really bad. And one doctor said, okay, I'm going to prescribe you something that's the equivalent of taking a nuclear bomb to a knife fight.
Oh, okay.
And I'm going to give you a high dose of this prednisolone. You take this high dose, and then over the week or 2 weeks that follow, you reduce the dose every day, right?
So you're really starting up top then?
Starting up, like I was taking like 10 of these tablets a day, and then reducing it down day by day.
Well, you can't really even take 10 vitamins a day without getting sick.
Yeah, can't even eat 10 bananas. And potassium poisoning for anybody who might be wondering. And yeah, so it was a mega strong dose, really strong dose. But honestly, I was just full of beans when I was on this medication. It was brilliant. I was waking up with just bagfuls of joie de fucking vivre, right?
Running to work.
Joy of life, right?
Lifting
just
cars on the way.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I was just an everyday superhero. I was average man, right?
Average man, I miss him.
Yeah, I know. It's been a while.
Yeah.
And if you haven't heard about Average Man, go right back to the start of Man vs. Mind. And I was just full of the joys of life. I was, honestly, it was brilliant, right? Food tasted better. I was just full of pep and vigour, and it was brilliant, right? But then the eczema would start to come back when I came off the dose, off the course of treatment. So I go back to the doctor, different doctor again, and say, well, the previous guy recommended this. Can I get another prescription because my skin has stopped responding to it, so I need to have some more. And I was doing this like on and off regularly for about 18 months.
Wow, okay.
Right. When I first started taking them, I knew that I was on some strong medication. And I said to my wife, can you read the list of side effects? Because I know it would just freak me out if I read them, right? And she did, and it was like as long as your arm. It was proper small print, you know.
Get the magnifying glass out.
End user license agreement level of side effects on this thing. And so back to the present, or in the past, the present for this anecdote.
The past present for
late
this.
2015, post-trauma.
Yeah.
We're at the doctor, and my wife says, this medication says anxiety, depression could be on it. Could be a side effect. She goes, right, okay, let me investigate, and I'll get back to you. Right, so had an appointment with her again, let's say a week later. And she said that she'd been speaking with an endocrinologist at a conference that she went to about my quote-unquote case, right? Like it's an episode of House, right? And she said the endocrinologist said, have you checked his blood for cortisol?
Okay, explain, because what's his cortisol? Can you explain that to me?
Cortisol, now, apologies to any listeners
in layman's
if I butcher this. My understanding of it is that it's like the stress hormone. It regulates stress.
Okay, got you.
So it's like a good and a bad thing.
Yeah.
Too much of it, and you're just so fucking stressed out, and you can't relax, and you can't sleep, and all this stuff. Like too much cortisol is a bad thing. Not having enough cortisol means you can't regulate the stressful, saddening, fearful, angry things in your life.
Yeah.
You just can't manage it.
So For you, that would be stepping in a puddle of water in the house would send you over the edge.
It does anyway. Even when my cortisol levels are fine. So, doctor checks my blood for cortisol. And then I go back after however much longer. And she goes, right, now ordinarily your cortisol would be between, let's say, this point here, he says, raising his hand, and this lower point here, he says, lowering his hand. Yours is effectively through the fucking floor. You've got none in your system. Literally no cortisol. And she says, and that, without any doubt, is what has caused this to happen, because you cannot regulate your own negative thought processes. You can't manage all the things that are going on in your head, consciously or subconsciously, to any degree whatsoever. You just can't manage it, which is why I basically had a fucking mental breakdown. And we should probably put a warning at the start of this episode that there's particularly strong language throughout. And she said, it basically means your adrenal gland has stopped doing its job because of the absolute pounding it's taken from having fake hormones put into your system from this prednisolone. So what we need to do is get you onto hydrocortisone tablets, and that is going to hopefully act like jumper cables on a car
And kickstart you.
and get your adrenal gland firing again. Right. So I go into this hydrocortisone treatment, and gradually I just start to feel just slightly more managed.
Okay.
And just like it's alleviating. Like there's not so much despair and darkness and sadness and doom mongering and fear and all of those things that dominated my thinking for fucking months. And I should point out that in the darkest times of this, I didn't have suicidal thoughts. No. But I don't think I was far from it.
Yeah.
I really don't think I was far from it, because there's only so long you can deal with that.
Well, thankfully, how to phrase this properly, you're a strong individual. And I think that, because I can't imagine being that low for that long and really, really not struggling. Like, I know you were struggling, but I think
I know what you mean.
I think
I know what you
I'm
mean.
getting
Yeah.
to.
I do know. I know what you're getting at. Yeah. Oh wow! Sorry about that. And so thankfully this treatment started to hold. And then I think it was about 6 months after that, they wanted to let the treatment like bed in. And then they recommended me on for counselling, which is like B-Tech therapy. I'd say, yeah.
Okay.
Not to belittle any counsellors out there, but that's how it felt. It like you're not going to see a psychologist or a psychiatrist. You're seeing the first port of call. It's like the first person who can see you.
So for us, this is kind of our counselling. You and I speaking to each other in this
format. I mean,
format.
obviously there is training to
Of
it
course,
and qualifications and whatnot.
yeah.
But it wasn't sort of like really analysing my brain to figure out all this stuff. Because as much as I dealt with the physiological issue, what it did, and this is crucial to this conversation to give this the gravity and the significance it deserves. It isn't a case of take some tablets to fix your adrenal gland and you're going to be right as roses and crack on with life.
No, because you have that baggage. It's there.
Yeah.
Those thoughts and that they're still there. And then moving forward, you're always, that's going to happen again. That can happen again.
Yeah.
So that's a heavy weight to be carrying around.
I'd opened Pandora's box. So I became acutely aware of all of this shit that I had to deal with in my head, but I'd also had all of the trauma from that period of time, from actually experiencing it. So that's why I call it like the kind of origin moment of my anxiety disorder, but becoming aware of the fact that I have a mental health disorder. And after the counselling that I went through, which was kind of like, it was like part therapy, but it was just really light touch. I was given like breathing exercises and mantras to repeat to myself, little sort of self-affirming things, which did help.
Yeah.
But then because I was in the midst of like a full-on anxiety spiral, even 9-12 months later, I would then almost like obsessively repeat these mantras to myself to the point where they actually become meaningless and now I hate thinking about them. But they kind of helped pull me through the worst of it. Now, I should also point out I wasn't given any medication to manage the anxiety or the mental health stuff at that time either. So I kind of just had to like grin and bear it.
So is that because they thought, all right, well, we know what the cause is. The cause is these steroids that you've been taking for your skin. So the mental health side of things probably going to go away once the cortisone's back in.
Yeah, probably.
And it's not. Don't worry about it having any lasting effects.
It was also 10 years ago, and sort of, you know, openness and a willingness to resolve mental health issues was not quite as prevalent as it is now. So that basically was like the end of it after I did my 12 weeks of counselling. 1 hour a week for 12 weeks, and then your NHS prescription for it runs out. So, you know, you're on your own now, bud. And after that, my mindset had been permanently altered. I felt more like myself again.
Well, that was going to be my next question. Like, when you said you couldn't see yourself in the mirror, then after all of this and finding out what the issue was, how to resolve the issue in quotes, how to resolve, is that air quotes, isn't it? Air quotes, how to resolve the issue. When could you look in the mirror again and go, oh, okay, yeah, I'm back?
I don't remember a specific point at which that came back. It just gradually fed back into being a bit more settled. I assume it would have been around the time that the meds started to kick in and my cortisol levels started to normalize and stuff like that. But, you know, it took a long time to get back to sort of being, like, feeling quote unquote normal. I had social anxiety for a long time after that. I remember it just became really hard going to birthdays and going to the pub and getting on the train and, you know, things like that just became really hard, really hard. And I remember having like an anxiety moment probably about a year later when my wife and I were on the train to go meet some friends for some drinks, and just something just flipped in my head when we were on the train, and I was like, I hate this, I hate this, I hate this, I have to go home, I have to go home, I have to go home. And she kind of helped to calm me down. But it was always there.
That's the thing, isn't it?
I don't know. Ask me another question.
Okay, so it was always there.
Yeah, it was always there.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's dive into your mistakes. I'm curious about this because I'm looking at this going, well, you didn't make a fucking mistake. None of this was a mistake. But you clearly have. There must have been telltale signs. There must have been this, or is that what you're thinking when you say mistakes?
No. There are two things you've touched upon there then. So there's the telltale signs.
And the lead up to it.
And the lead up to what happened and how I felt just before it happened. And then the mistakes, from my perspective, is how I manage my mental health afterwards.
Okay, I see.
I don't think any of my mistakes led to what happened.
Good.
It would, yeah. As you know, from my perspective, the mistake was made by the NHS. I'm not going to go start suing them for duty of care issues or anything like that, but it was the fact that multiple doctors repeatedly prescribed me really high doses of an incredibly powerful medication, where it almost became like a self-serve portal, and I just turn up like I'm going to fucking Mackie D's and just like tap on some screens going, I'd love more really powerful drugs, please. No, it's in terms of how I see the build up to it. I don't see myself as having any made any mistakes. What happened in the build up to it and how I was feeling is that shortly after we got back from honeymoon, I was on a Zoom call with my parents, and I think it must have been a couple of days after we got back from honeymoon. On top of the fucking world.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Newly married, we just had a beautiful 10 days away. We were on the beach and at the pool and eating whatever we wanted all week long. And my dad goes, God, I can tell you enjoyed your honeymoon a bit, mate. You put on a bit of weight, haven't you? And I was like, cheers, mate. Like, thanks very much. So I decided to get back into shape again.
Yeah.
I say get back into shape. I'd never been in shape. So I decided to try and develop some semblance to a shape. And so I started running, and I ran home on I'd say every day I would at least run from work to the main train station that I'd get in London. So I'd run from Oxford Circus area to Waterloo. So at the very least, so a few kilometres. On about 5 or 6 occasions, I ran all the way home.
Wow.
So I did like a 15k run. And on the final one of these runs I did, I got to one of the main bridges. I can't remember which one it was, but I got to one of the main bridges crossing the Thames. And I was probably 5-6k into this run or something by this point. And I felt all of my motivation go. I felt like I just had no energy left and no drive and no verve. And now I look back on it, I kind of position it at around about 3 days or so before this thing kicked in. There was a couple of other things that came along that I actually, do you know what? We've been very honest in this episode, and that's enough honesty. I'm not going to say one of the things that happened just before this thing kicked in, but there were a couple of obvious signs that I just wasn't right.
Yes,
but that's as far as I'd actually frame it, and I wouldn't have thought anything beyond. Do you know what? I just don't quite feel right.
Yeah, I'm not myself.
Yeah, I'm not myself.
I get that.
Am I a bit unwell? Maybe. Yeah. But is there any more to it than that? Probably not.
So there was no glaring neon lights, hey, we're heading to a bit of a fucking disaster here.
No, I don't think so. No, but then also consider that I'd been on like this emotional roller coaster over the 6 weeks prior to that.
Of course.
You know, build up to let's say 2-3 months prior to that. Yeah. Build up to the wedding, the honeymoon, the natural come down that every married couple has after they've got married and come back from honeymoon.
Oh God, we got this for the rest of our lives now.
It wasn't quite what I was getting at, but yeah, fair enough. And so it would have been hard to spot any obvious signs. I mean, if I'd obviously been like really down for quite a long time immediately after getting married, then I would have been like, well, there's clearly something wrong. Yeah. But I hadn't really had that. It was just the kind of that moment on the bridge I remember really vividly.
Just like someone pulled the plug and everything fell out.
Yeah, it was. It was like someone had just turned off the lights, and I was just like, like kind of lost my bearings for a second. Just felt like I just can't keep running. I suppose it's quite a nice metaphor, actually.
Yeah, it works. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of what led into it. It was that sort of combination of super duper powerful medicine for a really long time, and then those subtle warning signs just before that, where physically I wasn't quite right. And I remember being really upset the night before it happened, but I couldn't put my finger on why. And then it happened.
And that was you for the next however long. 6 months.
Well, and then the foreseeable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the mistakes.
Yeah, I think this is probably the crux of the episode.
Okay.
I didn't seek professional help early enough.
You swept it under the carpet after it happens.
And what I found then is, you know, that... Do you remember right at the start of Man vs. Mind, we used the metaphor about a fizzy bottle shaken up?
Yes. Yeah.
I would go through that every kind of 6 months. And then for about 2 to 4 weeks every 6 months, I'd feel like utter shit. And I could feel it coming on, and I knew what was happening. But I'd like white knuckle my way through it.
Hold on until it's done.
Yep.
It may not come.
And I knew that it would go.
Yeah.
Eventually. But I'd have 4 weeks of being fucking miserable for it. And that would happen like every 6 months, where I knew I was completely aware that I was hitting a low and I would be spiraling and anxious and stressed and insecure and all these things, and I just wouldn't do anything about it. And it took me nearly 10 years to go and see someone.
That's a lot of time to be feeling that every other month, every 4 months.
So I wish I'd sought some professional help sooner. And it was only after I'd had my first kid. It was my first kid, my boy would have been about 2, when I decided, you know what, I don't want to keep going through this.
No, you want to be present, you want to be happy as much as you can be, and not wait for the end of that waterfall that's coming, the edge of the drop. Yeah.
And I must have gone through 15 to 20 of these cycles over the intervening years before I actually sought some proper help.
Well, this is the thing. Like when we were speaking to Mark last week, it's all about talking. It's all about going out there and making that first step. Because once you do, so many doors open in such a positive way, and you're not shutting that door, and you're not keeping those emotions in, and they're not building up, and they're not exploding like a can of Coke with a Mento in it. Yeah,
exactly right. And I should point out that I started therapy and seeing a psychiatrist and taking a serotonin replacement medication about 20 months ago, and I haven't had a dip in that way. I haven't had one of those 4-week blocks of feeling like utter shit and garbage, because I've addressed all the traumas in the back of my mind. At least I like to think so.
Well, you're working on them.
There are probably some more. And I still currently work on them.
Yeah.
And I think that has, I don't want to say saved me, but it has spared me from feeling like that low, that depressed, that anxious. Yeah.
I'm glad. Like, I'm honestly glad that you took that step, the uncomfortable step of going, okay, I need help here. I can't manage this on my own, because I think everyone gets to that point. I think it's not just the case of, you went through something horrifically traumatic that, you probably wouldn't wish on your worst enemy that they would go through that period. Not everyone has that. Some people may just have too much on their mind. They may have work's too stressful, this is too stressful. But if you don't have that outlet, and if you don't have that person to speak to, and if you don't have that openness about it, it's going to be so tough to deal with.
Yes. And okay, yeah, so we've talked about a really traumatic incident that happened to me. But if I were to liken it to what Mark was saying in last week's episode, where he said, okay, are you getting angry? Are you withdrawing? Are you spending too much time ruminating? And these other telltale signs. Yes, that's what I was doing for that entire period. And every subsequent period where I'd then get this 2 to 4 weeks of feeling like garbage, I would be ruminating, withdrawing, spiraling, and getting angry. And they are very, very obvious signs, and anybody can exhibit those, and you don't have to have had this medically induced trauma that I ended up having. But what it did do for me is made me completely aware and accepting of the fact that I have a mental health disorder. I wish I hadn't had to go through that in order to realise that. I pray that nobody else has to go through that to realise that. My overriding message is, if anything that I have said in this episode is anything that somebody relates to, of maybe not recognising themselves as much anymore, or feeling like they've lost all motivation and spring in their step, if they are ruminating, aka overthinking, and doom mongering, please talk to someone about it.
Yeah,
because it is. I don't believe in having regrets in life. That is my one regret. That it took me 8-9 years to actually go and get it sorted, because I should have done. And I don't regret how my life has played out, but I regret that I didn't get it dealt with sooner, because I could have spent more time being happier.
But you did do it, and that's the main thing.
Eventually,
regardless of the time frame that it took. And I agree with you. If you'd done it sooner, then great. You could have, but you did it, and that's the main thing. And now you're. Although it's always going to be a struggle with mental health, and for you and I, we very different, similar, at very different stages and very different things. But just by opening up and taking that first step, it can change your life. It can,
and it has.
Yeah,
it has. Just after I started therapy and after taking medication, someone who I can confide in and speak to often about these things said when they started taking medication, it was as though they had metaphorically, they were clay pigeon shooting, right? Only instead of a shotgun, you're using like a grappling hook.
Yeah.
Right, or a claw. Right, and if the target flying through the sky is a negative, anxious thought, they'd, before medication, would fire off this hook and they'd grab it and they'd never let it go.
Yeah,
right?
that's it. You're mine.
Within about 2 weeks of taking this medication, possibly less time than that, I could let that clay pigeon, that target, just pass by. That negative thought would enter in one side of my brain and leave out the other side immediately. And I wouldn't think about it. I wouldn't judge it. I wouldn't dwell on it. I wouldn't ruminate. I'd just leave it and it would be gone. And that was like the single most transformative thing. Transformative thing. And I wish I'd done that sooner.
That's a really good way of putting it. I've never thought about it like that. But it very much is, isn't it? You just got constantly ping pong in your head with these thoughts that you shouldn't be thinking.
And also being able to recognize what an invasive thought is, or an intrusive thought. You know, stuff that is completely fucking irrational. And you know it's irrational, but you can't get rid of it. Like that thing about, we've spoken about it before, the pull of the void. You know, irrationally saying, I'm just going to jump off this balcony. Like, you know you're not going to do it.
But it's there.
But it's there.
Yeah.
But imagine that with random other shit from day-to-day life, where you just grab it and just really obsess over it for no fucking reason.
Yeah, it's not fun.
So that is kind of the long and short of it, really, I'd say.
Okay.
But yeah, my overriding message is, if anything that I've said here just resonates with a listener or a viewer, please open up about it with whomever you feel safest.
Thank you so much for that. I'm going to say that was tough. Like for me as well.
It was quite tough.
Yeah. And very proud of you for doing that. That's not easy. So
hey, you did it first, man.
But not, I had a panic attack, man. You had a whole different thing. Mate, mine was breezy. I'm good.
Yeah. I think if I'd attempted to do this before having gone through therapy,
a different story.
It would have been a different story entirely. Enough time has passed. More than 10 years has now passed since it started.
Sometimes that makes it harder because, like you say, those lids are well and truly sealed, and it's there. But man,
picking at old wounds.
Thank you so much, and you know, like you say, I hope this doesn't resonate with anyone, and I hope they're not having these issues. But if you are, I hope that you take Tim's advice and go and seek some help and do something about it, because you know there's light at the end of the tunnel, as Tim says. Always.
Yeah.
All right.
As Mark said last week, it's a temporary problem.
Yeah, exactly. That really stuck with me.
Yeah.
Really did that phrase. Sad one. You good?
Yeah.
Should we wrap up?
Yeah. We'll be back next week with something a bit more lighthearted.
I think so. Yeah, let's do road rage.
Road rage.
Let's do something.
We're gonna get angry. Yeah.
I think what we should do is just put a dash cam in your car for the next week.
That's a brilliant idea,
it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
We'll do yours and mine, because mine will just be me singing along and la la la.
Oh, do you know what? I am like that, but then I'll also just drop a profound number of expletives.
All right.
You know, I'll be like dancing along to Earth, Wind and Fire in my car, but then I'll also be like, you
We're going to beep that one out.
Already have.
Yeah, already have. On that note, love you all. Thank you so much. Thank you, Tim.
Catch you later. Oh, I wasn't recording.
Yeah. Imagine.